My name is Evan Parker. I'm 24 years old, and this is how I took revenge on the people who taught me my dreams didn't matter. It started on an ordinary Tuesday. I had just come home from a grueling shift, drenched in sweat and covered in the kind of exhaustion that seeps into your bones, only to find that something was off. I walked into the garage and froze. The spot where my bike had always been. My bike, the one I'd used every single day for years, was empty. At first, I thought maybe my dad had moved it, or my mum had cleaned up and stored it somewhere. But as I searched, panic bubbling in my chest, I realized it was gone, completely gone. I stormed into the kitchen, still in my work uniform, still smelling of the day's labor, and found my parents at the counter casually sipping coffee like nothing had happened. "Where's my bike?" I demanded, my voice shaking with a mix of anger and fear. My dad didn't even look up from his phone. When he said it, "We sold it. You don't need it anymore. We'll use the money for something useful." My mum nodded like this was the most reasonable thing in the world. Useful. The word stung. That bike wasn't just a piece of metal with wheels. It was the first real thing I had ever earned for myself. I bought it when I was 15, after months of weekend shifts at a dingy diner, saving every single tip, mowing lawns in the sweltering summer heat, doing odd jobs for neighbors, all for that bike. It wasn't just transportation. It was my freedom, my escape, my symbol that I could work for something, own something, be something, and they'd sold it, just like that, without asking, without even telling me first. I stood there in silence, staring at them, feeling like my chest was collapsing in on itself. They didn't even flinch, didn't apologize, didn't care. It was as if they'd sold a chair or an old lamp, like my blood, sweat, and years of sacrifice meant nothing. I couldn't even find words, only the sickening realization that the two people who were supposed to respect me the most had just dismissed one of the most meaningful parts of my life like it was trash. I went back to the garage, staring at the empty spot where my dreams used to sit, the silence in that space louder than anything. And in that moment, one thought hit me like a freight train. They would understand. Maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, but they would learn exactly what that bike meant to me, even if I had to teach them in the hardest way possible. What I didn't know then was just how far I'd go to make them feel what I felt, or how deeply satisfying that lesson would be. Asterisk. On the outside, we looked like the kind of family you'd see in a real estate brochure. Middle class, 2 parents, a younger sister named Haley, and a neat little house on a quiet suburban street. But behind the smiling pictures and polite greetings, my parents were anything but easy. They were controlling, suffocating even, wrapped in the belief that they knew what was best for me. They had plans for my life, my hobbies, my career, my future, all carefully mapped out in ways that left no room for what I actually wanted. It was always about what made sense to them, what was practical, what fit their definition of success. When I was 15, what I wanted more than anything in the world was a bike. Not a car, not expensive clothes, not some shiny gadget, just a good quality bike. To them, that sounded ridiculous. A waste of money, my dad said when I first brought it up. My mum agreed, insisting I didn't need it. But to me, that bike symbolized freedom, the ability to get to my part-time job without begging for rides, to visit friends without coordinating with their schedule, to exist in the world on my own terms. They didn't get that. They didn't even try to. So I decided I'd get it myself. Asterisk, that year became a blur of weekend shifts and summer jobs. I worked at a greasy little diner, bussing tables, mowed lawns in the heat that made me dizzy, and picked up every odd job I could find. I learned how to save, how to count tips like every dollar mattered, and how to keep going even when I was dead tired. It took me almost a full year, but I did it. I still remember the day I walked into that store and bought the bike with my own money, my hands shaking, my chest so full of pride it felt like it might burst. That bike wasn't just a purchase, it was a promise to myself. It meant I could build something for me, by me, without their approval. Asterisk, and it became so much more than just a bike. It carried me through everything. I rode it to school when I couldn't stand the suffocating silence in the car with my dad. I rode it to work, 2 late-night diner shifts that taught me more about people than any classroom ever did. It carried me through storms when the rain blurred my vision but kept me moving forward anyway. It carried me through heartbreaks and breakdowns when I needed to just get away, to move until the world felt quiet again. That bike wasn't just transportation, it was survival, it was therapy, it was my lifeline. Every time I looked at it, I remembered what it took to get it. The sweat, the sacrifice, the small wins. It was proof that I could make my own way, no matter what anyone said. Asterisk, fast forward to now. I'm 24. On paper, I've done everything right. I got a degree, landed a job as a junior software developer, and stayed out of trouble. But to my parents, I'm still that 15-year-old kid who doesn't know anything. They want me to live at home until I'm married, as if my adulthood is just a waiting room for some next chapter they approve of. They push me towards safe choices, ones they deem respectable, ones that keep me tethered to their vision of my life. They criticize how I spend my money, question my friendships, and always find subtle ways to remind me that I don't know better than them. Asterisk, but that bike was still mine. Even as my life changed, it remained untouched. A piece of my past and my independence that they hadn't managed to control. I kept it in the garage, always tuned, always clean, a quiet rebellion against the version of me they wanted to sculpt. It was a reminder that I could fight for something and win. It was a reminder that I didn't have to be what they wanted me to be, until the day I came home and saw the empty space where it used to sit. Until the day they sold it, without warning, without asking, without caring. They thought they were just selling a bike, but what they really did was rip away the one thing that had always been mine, and that changed everything. The betrayal hit like a gut punch, the kind that leaves you breathless and frozen in place. I walked into the garage, expecting to see it, my bike, sitting where it always had for nearly a decade, but all I found was an empty, gaping space. For a second, I thought maybe I was imagining it, that maybe my dad had moved it, or I'd parked it differently last time. But no, it was gone. The silence in that space was deafening. My chest tightened as I marched into the kitchen, my work clothes still sticking to me from the long day, my heart hammering like I'd been running. "Where's my bike?" I demanded, my voice sharper than I intended. My mum didn't even look up from chopping vegetables. "We sold it. It was just sitting there," she said casually, like she was telling me dinner would be ready in 10 minutes. Sold it. The words echoed in my head, but they didn't feel real. My dad, leaning against the counter, added without a hint of apology, "We'll put the money toward Haley's car fund. She needs it more than you do." Asterisk, I felt my face flush hot, like my whole body was catching fire. "You sold it, without asking me." That was mine. I could hear my voice cracking, part fury, part disbelief, but they didn't flinch. They exchanged a glance, that condescending parent look that always made me feel like I was a child having a tantrum, not an adult with a valid reason to be angry. "You don't use it anymore," my mum said in that calm, dismissive tone that only made my blood boil more. "You drive to work now. Don't be dramatic. Don't be dramatic." Those 3 words hit harder than the news itself. As if my feelings were nothing. As if years of saving, of working, of pouring myself into something that mattered deeply to me, could be brushed off like it was nothing more than junk cluttering their garage. Asterisk, I looked at them, my parents. The people who were supposed to respect me and felt so small, so invisible, humiliated. Like my voice didn't matter in my own house. Like I was 15 again, standing there begging them for something simple and being told my dreams didn't matter. My throat tightened, my chest burned, but I couldn't even bring myself to cry. I looked over at Haley, who was sitting at the kitchen island, scrolling through her phone. She didn't look guilty. If anything, she looked pleased, excited about the idea of getting a car, my bike, my hard work, my independence, reduced to just a down payment for her convenience. Asterisk, I wanted to scream. I wanted to throw something, but instead I slammed the door and went straight to my room, the sound echoing through the house. I sat on my bed, hands shaking, my jaw clenched so tight it hurt. I stared at my hands, at the same hands that once wiped sweat off my face after mowing lawns in the summer heat. The same hands that scraped every tip from that diner job into a jar until I had enough to buy that bike. They were shaking now. Not from fear, but from rage. I felt powerless, trapped. I couldn't even cry. The anger had burned straight through the sadness, leaving only a cold, bitter resolve in its place. And then, slowly, another thought pushed its way through the storm. They think I'm still that kid. The one who begged for permission, who accepted every no, who stayed quiet when they decided what was best. But I'm not that kid anymore, and they were about to learn just how much that had changed. Asterisk. For weeks, I barely spoke to them. Work became my escape. The office, the only place where I felt like my effort actually meant something. I stayed late, volunteering for tasks no one else wanted, telling my boss I was just trying to get ahead. I'd eat takeout in my car instead of coming home for dinner, and when I finally did return, I'd go straight to my room. Headphones in, shutting out the world. To them, it probably looked like I was sulking, nursing some grudge I'd eventually get over. But I wasn't sulking, I was planning. Every time I stared at that empty garage space, I thought about how easily they had dismissed me, how they'd taken something that mattered deeply to me and reduced it to a pile of cash for someone else's needs. And that's when it clicked. My family doesn't value things unless they benefit them. My bike wasn't freedom or hard-earned pride to them. It was just an unused object they could liquidate. And if that's how they saw things, then fine. I'd play their game. Asterisk, so I made a decision. I was going to buy them something they couldn't ignore. Not something they could sell. Not something they could dismiss as unnecessary. But something that would stare them in the face every day and remind them that I wasn't their dependent little kid anymore, that I could do things they couldn't control, couldn't take credit for, couldn't touch. The thought of it lit something inside me I hadn't felt in years, a kind of raw determination that made my hands itch to move, to build, to create. Asterisk, I threw myself into work like a man. Possessed. I stopped clocking out mentally at 5 p.m. I took on extra projects, even ones outside my role, learned new coding languages at night, and offered myself up for overtime whenever it was available. But I didn't stop there. I picked up freelance, coding gigs on weekends and late nights, building websites for small businesses, debugging software for startups, anything that would put extra cash in my account. I started living off caffeine and stubbornness, surviving on 4 hours of sleep a night for months. My co-workers thought I was obsessed with climbing the corporate ladder. My manager said she admired my grind. Even my parents noticed and, in their typical condescending way, started making comments at dinner like, "Finally getting serious about your future, huh?" I let them believe that. They had no idea I was quietly stockpiling every dollar, building a war chest not for my future as they imagined it, but for my revenge. Meanwhile, the tension in the house became unbearable. Every family dinner felt like walking through a minefield of passive-aggressive remarks. "You've been working too much, Evan," my mum would say, as if she hadn't spent years criticizing me for not being ambitious enough. "You're not as fun as you used to be," my dad would add, like selling off my happiness for Haley's convenience hadn't sucked the joy out of me. And the one that always made my blood boil: "Don't forget, family comes first." Family came first when they sold my independence. Family came first when they decided my hard work, my freedom, my pride was worth less than Haley having a slightly bigger down payment on her car. They didn't care about me, they cared about control. Every word they said, every look they gave me, every little reminder that they thought they still owned me, it all fueled me. I became hyper-focused, laser-sharp. I'd sit in my room coding until my eyes burned, the soft glow of my laptop the only light I needed. I kept a running tally in a spreadsheet of every dollar earned, watching the numbers climb and feeling a small, dark thrill knowing exactly what I was going to do with it. I didn't spend on anything extra. No new clothes, no nights out, no impulsive purchases. Every dime went into the plan. I wanted them to feel it. I wanted them to stand in front of what I would build and understand, finally, that they couldn't control me anymore. The more I worked, the more I felt like I was building a wall between us, brick by brick, paycheck by paycheck. They didn't notice at first. They thought I was too busy to fight, too busy to dwell on the bike. They probably thought I'd finally grown up in the way they always wanted, obedient, career-driven, compliant. But inside, I wasn't becoming what they wanted. I was becoming something they wouldn't know how to deal with. And the best part, they had no idea what was coming. Months later, after endless nights of coding until my vision blurred and weekends spent glued to my laptop instead of living like a 24-year-old should, I was ready. I hadn't said a word to them about what I was doing. No hints, no clues, no explanations for my obsessive work schedule. They thought I was just burying myself in my career, finally conforming to their version of growing up. Let them think that, on a crisp Saturday morning, I called them all outside, asking them to meet me in the driveway. My parents emerged, first, looking confused and slightly irritated that I'd interrupted their weekend routine. Haley followed, still half asleep but instantly perking up when she saw the anticipation on my face. She thought I had some surprise for her, maybe news about the car fund they were supposedly building for her. In a way, she was right. I took a deep breath, my heart pounding so hard I could feel it in my throat, and then they saw it, a brand new car gliding up the street, sleek and shining in the morning sun. When I parked in the driveway, they just stood there, stunned into silence. For you, I said simply, stepping out and tossing the keys to Haley. She caught them awkwardly, her mouth hanging open. My mum blinked, confused, as if she couldn't comprehend what she was seeing. My dad finally broke the silence, his voice uncharacteristically hesitant. "Evan, what is this?" Asterisk. I looked at them, all three of them, and let the silence linger for a moment before I answered. "I bought it, paid in full, with my own money, just like I bought that bike. You know, the one you sold." The words were sharp, deliberate, cutting through the air like glass shattering on concrete. My mum opened her mouth, but nothing came out. Haley's excitement dimmed, her gaze flicking nervously between us. My dad stayed frozen, his jaw tight, his eyes fixed on the car as if staring at it would give him answers. Asterisk. I turned to Haley, my voice steady. "You needed a car, right? Well, now you've got one. Paid in full. No thanks to them." She looked at me like she didn't know whether to say thank you or apologize. So she said nothing. Asterisk. Then I faced my parents, squaring my shoulders in a way I never had before, feeling the weight of years of silence finally breaking. "This isn't a gift," I said, my tone low but unyielding. "It's a lesson. I wanted you to know exactly how it feels when someone takes what you worked for, what you bled for, and uses it for themselves like it's nothing. I wanted you to stand here and feel what I felt when I walked into that garage and saw my bike was gone." My voice trembled, not from weakness, but from the rawness of finally saying everything I'd been holding in for months, maybe even years. Asterisk. My mom's hand flew to her mouth, tears welling in her eyes. She looked small, fragile, like she finally understood the weight of what they'd done. My dad, the man who always had an answer for everything, who always had a justification ready, stood there, speechless. His face was unreadable, but I could see it in his eyes. The realization, the shame, the sting of being confronted by the truth they'd brushed off for so long. For the first time in my life, I watched my parents truly see me, not as a child they could control, but as an adult standing on his own 2 feet, one who demanded respect. Asterisk. No one spoke for what felt like an eternity. Haley gripped the keys, like they were burning her hands. My mum wiped her face, her voice barely above a whisper, when she finally managed to say, "Evan, we didn't realize," but I cut her off. "No, you didn't. You never do. You just decide what's best and expect me to accept it. Well, not anymore." Asterisk. And in that silence, standing in the driveway between the car I'd bought and the family who had taken my independence, I felt it, the shift, the power I'd clawed back, the understanding that, for the first time, they couldn't ignore what I'd done or dismiss how I felt. For the first time, I saw it hit them, and that was worth every sleepless night. After that day, everything shifted in ways I didn't expect. The tension in the house didn't vanish overnight, but it changed, softened, almost like the air had cleared just enough for us to breathe again. My parents were quieter around me, less quick to dismiss my words or make those offhand comments that used to cut so deep. A few days after the driveway confrontation, my dad came to my room, awkward and stiff, the way he always got when emotions were involved. He apologized. Not perfectly, not with all the depth I wished for, but enough that I could tell he meant it. My mum followed a day later, tearful and rambling, saying she never realized how much that bike meant to me, that they were only trying to do what they thought was best. It wasn't a perfect apology either, but it was more than I'd ever gotten before. And Haley, she hugged me and thanked me for the car, though I could tell she didn't fully understand what it had cost me. How many sleepless nights and buried resentments had gone into that gift. But I didn't need her to. It wasn't really about her. The real change happened inside me. For the first time, I felt untethered from their control. I'd spent so many years trying to earn their approval, trying to live in a way that would make them proud, waiting for them to treat me like an adult. But the truth was, they were never going to see me as grown until I forced them to, and I had. Standing in that driveway, I'd taken back something I didn't even realize I'd lost. My voice, my agency, my right to make choices and stand by them without waiting for permission. A few months later, I moved out. Not in a dramatic, slam the door and never look back kind of way, just quietly, deliberately. I found a small apartment close to work, signed a lease with my own money, and packed up my things without asking for their help. My mum cried when I told her. My dad grunted something about being proud, but deep down I think they understood that this was the natural next step. My own place, my own space, 4 walls that belonged only to me, where no one could sell a piece of my life without asking. And that car. I didn't see it as a symbol of what they took from me anymore. Instead, it became something else entirely, a reminder of what I can do when I stop waiting for their approval. A reminder that I am capable of building, of creating, of turning pain into action. It sat in their driveway for a while, a constant reminder to them too, but for me, it wasn't about them anymore. It was about me reclaiming something I didn't know I needed to. Sometimes I still think about that bike, about how something so simple could hold so much meaning, but I don't ache for it the way I used to. I outgrew it, not because they took it, but because I learned what it represented. Freedom, independence, self-respect could exist in me, not in the things I owned. And now, in my own apartment, with my own life finally unfolding the way I want it to, I know this. I'll never let anyone make me feel small in my own story again. It's late at night, the city humming softly beneath me as I sit on my apartment balcony with a mug of coffee warming my hands. The skyline glows in the distance, a reminder that I'm here now on my own, in a life I built piece by piece. I lean back in my chair and think about that kid I used to be, the one who spent an entire year saving every tip, every crumpled dollar, just to buy his first bike. The one who believed, maybe naively, that freedom could be earned if you worked hard enough for it. I smile because, in a way, he was right. I take a slow sip of coffee, feeling the quiet settle in, and I murmur to myself, almost laughing at the absurdity of it all. They sold my bike without asking, so I bought them a car with my earnings. Saying it out loud feels strange, like closing the last page of a story I didn't know I was still reading. And then it hits me. My revenge wasn't about punishing them, not really. It was about proving something to them, yes, but mostly to myself, that I'm not the kid who waits for permission anymore, that I'm not someone whose dreams can be sold off for someone else's convenience. I'm someone who fights for what's his, who can take loss and turn it into something bigger, something untouchable. I stare out at the city lights, the cool night air brushing against my skin, and I feel it, that quiet, unshakable certainty. They may have sold my bike, but they'll never sell my dreams again. Fade out.